Madame, Monsieur, bonsoir. Voici une perspective indienne sur le scandale d'espionnage commandité selon Sherry Singh par Pravin Jugnauth. Direction New Delhi, où une véritable personnalité politique du journalisme nous attend via Zoom. Il s'agit du fondateur du journal en ligne The Wire. The Wire a fait partie du consortium Forbidden Stories qui a fait éclater, exploser le scandale Pegasus, qui a fait peser de lourds soupçons, de lourdes accusations sur Narendra Modi. On l'accuse d'avoir acheté ce logiciel israélien pour surveiller, espionner journalistes et opposants. Le portable de notre invité était infecté par le malware Pegasus. Le parallèle est fait entre l'actualité mauricienne et l'actualité indienne avec un dénominateur commun du nom de Narendra Modi. Hi, Siddharth Varadarajan, and thanks for being our guest and sharing your views on this massive Mauritian news.
Thank you.
Why are these allegations and strong suspicions of sniffing made by the former CEO of Mauritius Telecom of such importance that The Wire has already written 2 articles on the subject?
I think for 2 reasons. First, we have a general interest in any use of technology to intercept the private communication of people, and whether this is unlawful interception of phone calls or the internet. We regard this as a violation of privacy, and given the nature of technology, given the kind of impulses driving this kind of surveillance, if something is affecting the people of Mauritius today, then this is not a concern just of Mauritius and its people alone. It's something that the wider world needs to take note of. And of course, the second issue which triggered our interest, particularly after Prime Minister Pravin Jugnauth identified the nationality of the so-called third party that had been deputed to Baie-Jacotet, to the internet landing station. It was the Prime Minister of Mauritius who identified this as an Indian team. That immediately added a dramatic dimension as far as we were concerned, because the question is, who are these Indians? Why were they there? This is not a story that people in India can afford to ignore.
But tell us, Siddharth, does Modi's government have a cyber surveillance squad?
The Modi government was exposed, or rather the use of Pegasus in India, which is Israeli-made military-grade spyware. The use of the spyware in India against hundreds of targets, including myself, and including major opposition political figures, was exposed last year by The Wire and its partners as part of the Pegasus project led by Forbidden Stories in Paris. And based on data of telephone numbers in a particular leaked database, we were able to probe the story and actually forensically test a number of telephones, including my own, and convincingly established that Pegasus had been installed and was being used. And there's no doubt in our minds that the agency which targeted so many Indians was in fact an agency of the government of India. So the short answer to your question, does the government of India have technology? Of course it does. And Pegasus is advanced. It's not available to every government. We know the Israeli government vets its customers quite carefully. But if the surmise or the allegations of sniffing internet traffic at the Baie-Jacotet landing station are correct, then I think most people would concede that this technology is not very exclusive or advanced. This technology has existed for a while. and no doubt it exists with the government of India and its agencies too. The only missing element is the willingness of a government to deploy this technology, because it is a highly intrusive form of keeping track of internet traffic, which is bound to infringe on the privacy rights of its targets, in this case, the people of Mauritius.
There's one question which hasn't been answered, Siddharth, is we don't really know, well, as far as Jagannath is concerned, he says that there was a national security threat and he approached Modi. But could it be that it is the Indian government who asked for a favor from the Mauritian counterpart?
Before I answer your question, I would preface it by saying that the only information we have at The Wire is what has emerged from news reports in Mauritius, the statements of Sherry Singh, the statement of the CTO of MT who resigned, and of course the statements made in Parliament and outside by your Prime Minister. And I was struck by one statement of Mr. Jagannath in particular, which seemed to me very, very, shall we say, ambiguous, because he spoke about how Sherry Singh's refusal to cooperate with the request to allow this third-party team, which he himself identified as an Indian team, to access the internet cable at Baie-Jacotet. He said how this had in a way embarrassed him, because he said, I was going to meet Prime Minister Narendra the next day.
Exactly.
And what was I supposed to tell him? Now, if you look at this concept, right? Normally, if the request had originated from Mr. Jagannath's side, and he had asked Mr. Modi for a favor, and Mr. Modi had said, fine, we'll send a technical team to assist you in whatever security concern you have, then the Mauritius government could have any number of reasons why it decides not to pursue this. It's hard to imagine why this would be embarrassing for Mr. Jagannath in any way, why he would be at a loss for words in telling Mr. Modi why this so-called survey is not happening. The question of embarrassment arises mainly or chiefly if the request to deploy the team came from Mr. Modi's side, Mr. Jagannath agreed, and now is in a position or finds himself in a position where he is unable to fulfill the promise that he had made. So basing myself on what Mr. Jagannath himself has said and using simple linguistic analysis, I would say that there is certainly a suggestion that the request would have come from the Indian side. And that may also explain the kind of secrecy and the kind of obfuscation that the Mauritius Prime Minister has engaged in.
This opens up the debate about the Mauritian sovereignty and Narendra Modi's government on the geopolitical strategy in the Indian Ocean. What are your views today on the importance of Mauritius to India, bearing in mind that there might have been that request from Mr. Modi to sniff data from the safe cable in Mauritius?
Look, Mauritius and India have very deep cultural and political and security ties. Both countries are important members of the Indian Ocean community. And the Indian Ocean is a major zone of geopolitical contention right now, particularly with the entry of China as a maritime power. And this concerns us in India. I would imagine this concerns you in Mauritius too, because assuring the safety and safe transit of traffic in the Indian Ocean region is something which both Port Louis and New Delhi have an abiding interest in. Besides this, there are lots of other areas where India and Mauritius have cooperated, and this is natural, this is good, this is healthy. Mauritius has also gone to the extent of appointing Indian nationals, retired Indian officials as national security advisors, and by and large, this has gone without any controversy in Mauritius. And this is testimony to the close ties between the two countries. What's happened now, unfortunately, as a result of these allegations, and we still don't know what the truth is, quite frankly, What has happened now is that many of these, this closeness, many of the aspects of this closeness are likely to now be questioned, are likely to now become controversial in ways that they haven't been in the past, and which may not be helpful either to India or to Mauritius necessarily. India could have reasons for wanting to sniff internet traffic, which has to do with the strategic location of Mauritius in the Indian Ocean and the fact that the growing Chinese naval footprint is a cause of concern, or it could have to do with the use that Indian companies have made of Mauritius as a safe haven for some of their money. We know that Mauritius is a large investor in India, and this money is not of Mauritian origin. This money is of Indian origin. And the Indian authorities have traditionally turned a blind eye towards this evident round-tripping of Indian money. Could this financial flow also warrant some desire, trigger some desire to keep an eye on internet traffic? Perhaps. But this is all in the realm of speculation. Right now, I think what is paramount is that there be some clarity on what exactly was done at Baie-Jacotet, at whose urging, and to what extent was this in compliance with Mauritius's own laws and regulations.
Would you believe that Prime Minister Modi, who skirted the Pegasus scandal like he did, you know the story better than we do, would you believe that he would be embarrassed by the way things have turned out today, with his name being dragged into this affair? Because apart from being prime ministers, Jugnut and Modi are friends.
Axel, I believe there is little room for personal friendships in diplomacy. Of course, it helps if leaders are friends or develop friendly relations, but we are talking about the very hard national interests of both India and Mauritius, which have been jeopardized as a result of this entire controversy. And I would imagine that Mr. Modi would have rather not had his name mentioned in this entire scandal. And my sense is that Mr. Jugnauth, probably sensing that he had his back to the wall and sensing the enormous goodwill which exists in Mauritius towards India, thought that presenting the so-called survey at Baie-Jacotet as a request that Mr. Modi had acceded to, a request that the Mauritius side put and India acceded to, that somehow bringing Mr. Modi in would end the controversy. I think it's had the opposite effect. And this is really quite unfortunate. So my sense is that, both in Mauritius and I think slowly in India too, this story is going to trigger greater and greater interest. And I don't think that it can be swept under the carpet all that easily.
But despite this, I am told that the majority of Indians, they seem to, they do not care that they are being watched by the government. I mean, India has a story of terrorism, and is that true that the majority of Indians, they don't care if the government is breaching their privacy as long as the government is protecting them?
I don't think that's true at all. I think that there is growing awareness in India about privacy concerns. And a couple of years ago, the Supreme Court of India actually passed a judgment more or less declaring the right to privacy as one of the fundamental rights that every citizen is entitled to. And it is true, of course, that the government does not have a comprehensive privacy law in place which penalizes those who violate it. But the fact that the Pegasus revelations triggered such anger and sustained the opposition for several months is testimony to the fact that privacy concerns and violations of privacy matter to people at large. I don't think national security can serve as an alibi or as an excuse to justify this. In fact, in its very important order last year, the Supreme Court, while setting up a technical committee to probe our allegations about the use of Pegasus, specifically told the government, which was refusing to answer questions put to it by the court about, for example, have you bought Pegasus? The Supreme Court told the government in no uncertain terms that you cannot invoke national security as an excuse to violate the fundamental rights of people. And the Chief Justice of India, in fact, singled out the rights of the media in particular, because a number of Pegasus targets are journalists, including myself and including a lot of reporters, investigative reporters. And the Chief Justice said that, look, this is a violation of a journalist's right to function, because when you violate the confidentiality of sources, then you are compromising the ability of a journalist to work. And this is not acceptable.
That's a personal question I wanted to ask you. Beyond the fact that your phone was hacked, was compromised by Pegasus, because you are an investigative journalist, you are writing up and publishing stories which are unpleasant for the people in power, for Modi's government. But you are also a family man, and people have the tendency to forget that before being a journalist, you are a family man, just like any citizen in India. What it's like to get the news that your phone has been hacked by the government from the point of view of a family man?
Well, you feel violated, obviously, and you feel concerned not just about your own privacy concerns, but about the privacy of your family, your wife. If you have kids, your kids. If you have parents who are living with you, then them. So in the nature of surveillance under Pegasus is that it turns your phone into a listening device, into a camera, actually, which is in the hands of the government. And it's not just what you say or do that becomes accessible then to the government, but also anybody you get in touch with or you are in touch with. And in the first instance, it's your family. So surveillance of this kind is an assault not just on the individual, but on the wider set of people that he or she lives and interacts with. And you feel violated. And I think that this is part of the reason, because when we explain to people exactly what Pegasus does, that this is not simply one guy at the end of the phone, as in the movies, just listening to what you're saying, but it's something much more sinister. I think that has struck a chord with people, and they have taken this issue seriously, which is why politically the government last year was definitely on the back foot.
My ultimate question, Siddharth, would you say that as long as Mr. Prime Minister Modi will be in power, internet in India won't be safe and free? Or can you win against Mr. Modi and get a free internet in India?
The Modi government is not a friend of internet freedom. It's not a friend of press freedom. It's not a friend of free speech. And all of these rights, all of these freedoms are under attack in one way or the other. When it comes to the internet, we've seen areas of the country, cities, even an entire state like Jammu and Kashmir being subjected to an internet shutdown that ran for weeks and months on end, where people were deprived of the ability to use the internet, full stop. So, and India leads the chart in countries around the world that have shut down the internet for political reasons. So we are dealing with a government that is hostile to this freedom. But at the same time, we have an independent media. Of course, a large section of media has willfully given up on that independence, but there are enough of us who are fighting the good fight. And there are enough judges who also believe in taking a stand in favor of the Constitution. So I am confident that at the end of the day, history will not favor those who stand for the suppression of freedoms. History will favor those who believe in defending their freedoms. And I think that's how the cookie will crumble in India.
Siddharth Varadarajan, thank you very much. Let me remind to our viewers that you are one of the founders of the Baie-Jacotet qui a révélé le scandale à Pegasus aux côtés d'autres médias faisant partie du consortium Forbidden Stories. We are looking forward to work together on future stories. Why not, Siddharth?
Definitely. Thank you, Axel.